wife, getting to know your wife is a science. Now, when we talk of science, we are basically talking of the intellectual and the practical activity. And this practical activity or intellectual activity encompasses the systematic study of the conduct and behavior of that wife. And how do you do that? You do that through observation and through experience. Now, I want you to take note of the following. You need to know that the very thing that got you attracted to your wife whilst you were courting will be the very thing that will bring about friction in your marriage. Let me repeat that, because a lot of people get themselves moved from Goshen to wherever things are now because they failed to realize this point. The very thing that attracted you to your wife whilst you were courting or caused you to start courting will be the very thing that will bring about friction in your marriage, which requires you to perceive, which requires you to study, which requires you to investigate, which requires you to have knowledge. And this is where perception and understanding of how to live with her comes into play. Once we as husbands refuse to learn and to accept that they are different, that these creatures called women, wives, are different. They look at things differently from how we look at things. They feel things differently from how we feel. We then will fall into a trap. The wife was sent to you to complement you, which means then she cannot be strong in the areas you're already strong in. Then there's no need for her to be complementing. Complementing means she becomes strong in the areas that you are weak in, so that she can now provide the help. So the wife was sent to you to complement you and to help you see the other side of things that you are missing out on. So one thing you should never try to do, forget ever changing your wife. Your marriage will find joy, your marriage will find fulfillment, your marriage will find enjoyment if you stop thinking that you should change your wife or that you can change your wife. Accept her for who she is. Find out what she loves and keep doing that. Avoid what she does not enjoy. Then you will have peace in that marriage. The next one, a husband is meant to be a protector. The Bible or the portion of scripture that we are reading says we should live with her with understanding. And it talks about giving honor to her as a weaker vessel. Now, I do know, I understand, I've been around for some time, that sometimes referring to women, wives, they end up getting offended when we say you are a weaker vessel. But we are not saying that. You see, a wife as a weaker vessel, you can look at even how God created her. She is not as strong as her husband. Okay? So it doesn't mean that the wife is less than the husband. in terms of importance. But the example that I want us to think of is in his physique, in his strength. We've got to understand. Think about this. If you're going to treat your wife, treat her the way you treat your fine china ware. And you treat that china, the plates that you bought expensively, differently from the way you treat paper plates. Why? Because fine china needs to be handled carefully because of its value, compared, on the other hand, with paper plates that you can do with them as you choose. That's what should come into your mind. Weaker vessel, therefore, needs tender care. Tender, loving care. Let me use an example here. There are certain things that men can handle. And I'm not saying it's good, so don't hear what I'm not saying. But let's use an issue of pornography. A man can look at another woman's nakedness and it doesn't hurt him, but it will definitely hurt and damage the emotions and feelings of your wife. So you do not get there because you know it will inflict pain on your spouse. You see, cheating is not just physical, it can also be emotional. So faithfulness to your spouse should also be in the area of emotions. Treat her with care. You reserve your eyes just for her. I am so thankful that I am not a movie guy. And I'll be honest with you. There have been very few times that I've watched movies. And I would have watched movies because my wife says, let's watch this. But if there's nudity in that movie, she knows I'm walking away. She can continue if she wants, or we are changing the channel. Because I don't want to expose myself to beginning to think about things that are not real, which are made to be real on what I am watching. So I want to prolong my days of Goshen by keeping my eyes strictly for my wife. You see, not dealing with this, the issue of value, will create problems. Because the moment my wife knows I don't value her more than I value someone else, I'm in big trouble. And it is for this reason why the Bible does tell us, as husbands, to show honor to our wives and to live with them as they are a weaker vessel. Some wives, we know that they are much stronger than their husbands. I've dealt with cases where husbands have been beaten up by their own wives. But generally, women, in terms of their body, are much weaker than their husbands. So the other reason why men are built much stronger physically is for them, the men, to provide protection. So the men should not then use their strength to bully or to fight their wives. Never use your strength to abuse your wife. The next one is number 8. The man needs to be passionate. When I say passionate, I mean he is to love his wife. Ephesians 5 verse 25, 26, and verse 28 puts it this way: husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Verse 26, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. So, verse 28, husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. All these scriptures deal with husbands loving wives. Why? The standard of how you love your wife is not how she loves you. Because sometimes that's what we do. We say we reciprocate. She loves me to this extent, I will now love her to the same extent. So we cannot reciprocate, or the measure cannot be how she loves you. And it's good to be loved by your wife, but that's not the standard. Let me show you again what the scripture says. It says, husbands, love your wife as Christ also loved the church. Whoa. Now that just raises up that standard. So whether she doesn't like you or she doesn't love you as much as you do, you still have to love her. Her job, if I read right, is to respect you. So you will see that you love her unconditionally, she will respect you unconditionally. So whether she is not showing forth her love, you are mandated to love. So love her just as Christ loved the church. So treat her well. Your standard has to be beyond what she is doing to you. Your standard is what Jesus did for you, and that's how you should love your wife. Husbands are supposed to nourish their wives, cherish their wives, cleanse their wives with the washing of the word. I mean, that is truly loving. Things that this love should include would be to make her feel loved. Where you are constantly asking her, do you feel loved? I mean, I ask my wife, do you feel ministered unto? And then she'll say, yeah. So create that as a challenge, that she does feel loved. The next one, which is the last one in this, then I start bringing together the other part. Husbands must understand the wife's love language. What do I mean by a wife's love language? This is how she will appreciate your showing of love. Now, I'll give you an example. I spoil this wife of mine. I'll write cards, I'll write notes, I'll send text messages, I'll call, I'll check in several times a day just to say I love you. Hey, you are still the best thing that ever happened to me, or I'll say something like that. Every day. Now that she's at work out in Johannesburg, I'll send some text messages, WhatsApp messages. I'll call people to surprise her with stuff. She loves chocolates, even though she now doesn't like me giving her chocolates because she says I am adding weight, or I'm adding to her weight. So she appreciates, but she's not happy that she is getting chocolate. My wife is not a flower girl. I don't know what happened there. So I quickly came to realize she will appreciate chocolates more than getting a bouquet of flowers. She would love for me to do something, clean the garden, do some kind of work around the house as a means of me appreciating and showing my love to her. So you've got to identify that love language that your wife appreciates. Because if you give flowers and she doesn't appreciate flowers just because someone else said, my wife appreciates flowers, you've just missed the bus. You've climbed the wrong tree. So learn the language. So quickly, we have always talked about the 5 languages or love languages. And these are 5 ways that people receive or people express love in relationships. The first one is words of affirmation. These are verbal expressions of love. I love you. My wife will ask me, why? What makes you love me? So I now came to realize that I cannot just say to my wife, I love you. I have to find a reason to associate my love. I got myself in trouble. And the trouble was, every time I talk to someone, it doesn't matter, male, female, I'll always end up saying to the person on the other side of the line, I love you. So she then asked me, so this love that you are saying to others, you love them, is it the same love that you love me with? And I found myself like, no, we are talking about different. So that's why then she says, then you've got to tell me and differentiate how you love me from the other people that you say you love. What makes me different from them? So I have now learned to pick on things that she is, things that she does, and place them